Why don't we call it an empire? What makes you think you're not living in one right now? Most people believe empires ended with decolonization. Britain withdrew, France retreated, Portugal left. The age of empire supposedly ended in the 1960s. But what if it never ended? What if it just became invisible? You're using imperial infrastructure every time you buy something internationally. You're participating in imperial power every time your country borrows dollars. The empire isn't coming. You're already inside it, and it's been operating in plain sight this entire time. Welcome to Economics of Power. The United States maintains 750 military bases in at least 80 countries. No empire in history has had this many foreign bases. Not Rome, not Britain, not any previous power. Roman legions controlled the Mediterranean. British garrisons secured colonial possessions. American forces occupy every inhabited continent simultaneously. 174 bases in Germany, 113 in Japan, 83 in South Korea. The numbers are staggering. Camp Humphreys in South Korea is the largest overseas American base, larger than many cities. Over 50,000 U.S. troops stationed in Japan alone. This isn't defense. Defense happens at borders. This is projection. Imperial projection. Most Americans don't know these bases exist. The bases are rarely discussed in media, rarely debated in Congress. They're accepted as normal, necessary, obviously good for security. But security for whom? The bases cost $80 billion annually when you include personnel expenses. Host nations sometimes pay portions through host nation support, but wealthy countries getting free defense is the global norm. Japan and Germany can spend on domestic programs while America pays for their security. This arrangement didn't happen accidentally. It's the structure of empire, where the imperial center subsidizes its own domination. The bases serve a function beyond military defense. They're staging grounds for intervention. Since 1980, U.S. bases in the Middle East have launched wars or combat operations at least 25 times, in at least 15 different countries. The presence of nearby bases reduces the cost of intervention, makes it tempting, creates expectations. When Iran attacked Saudi oil facilities in 2019, the Saudis expected American retaliation. They host American bases. They assumed that meant American protection. This is how empire works. Military presence creates obligation. Obligation creates dependency. Dependency maintains the system. But the bases are just the visible layer. The real empire is financial. It operates through infrastructure you use daily without recognizing. The dollar is the world's reserve currency. 60% of global foreign reserves are held in dollars. 40% of all international transactions use dollars. This creates structural dependency. Countries need dollars to trade, to buy oil, to service debt. They must hold dollar reserves, buy U.S. Treasury bonds. This gives America what economists call exorbitant privilege. The U.S. can print dollars, and the world accepts them. America borrows cheaply while others pay premium rates. The enforcement mechanism is SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, a Belgium-based messaging system that handles international bank transfers. 11,000 institutions, over 200 countries, 44 million messages daily. SWIFT doesn't move money. It sends the instructions that tell banks how to move money, but it's completely essential. Without SWIFT access, countries can't conduct international trade, can't receive payments, can't function in the global economy. And the U.S. controls SWIFT access through sanctions. This is the empire's real weapon. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Western countries removed Russian banks from SWIFT. Immediately, Russia couldn't receive payment for exports, couldn't pay for imports. The ruble collapsed 30% in days. Interest rates doubled to 20%. Bank runs erupted. This happened without firing a shot, just by cutting access to financial infrastructure. The same weapon was used against Iran, North Korea, Venezuela. Countries targeted by U.S. sanctions find themselves economically isolated, not through military occupation, through exclusion from dollar systems. This is imperial power in the 21st century. The weaponization has consequences. Countries recognize their vulnerability. Russia developed SPFS system for transfer of financial messages, a domestic alternative to SWIFT. 550 institutions across 24 countries now use it. China created CIPS, cross-border interbank payment system. 1,600 users, processes $17 trillion annually, growing 27% yearly. These alternatives are fragmenting the global financial system, creating parallel structures, because countries understand a fundamental truth. Whoever controls payment infrastructure controls sovereignty, and America controls too much. Dollar transactions are cleared through U.S. banks, even when no American is involved. A German company buying from a Chinese supplier in dollars must clear that transaction through New York. This gives America legal jurisdiction over the transaction. The U.S. argues it passes through American soil electronically. Therefore, U.S. law applies. This extraterritorial reach enables secondary sanctions. America sanctions Iranian banks, then threatens to sanction any foreign bank that does business with Iranian banks. Foreign banks comply, not because they agree with U.S. policy, because they can't afford exclusion from dollar markets. This is how empire co-ops foreign institutions into enforcing imperial policy. The architecture is deliberate. After World War II, America designed the global financial system at Bretton Woods, created the IMF. The World Bank established the dollar as reserve currency, initially backed by gold. When that became unsustainable in 1971, Nixon ended gold convertibility. The dollar became fiat. But it remained essential. Why? Because oil was priced in dollars. The petrodollar system locked the world into dollar dependency. Countries need oil. Oil requires dollars. Therefore, countries need dollars. This wasn't market forces. This was imperial design. The invisibility is the genius. Traditional empires were obvious. Colonial administrators, visible occupation, direct extraction. Modern empire operates through systems that appear neutral. Markets, international institutions, financial infrastructure. People don't feel occupied. They feel like participants. But participation is compulsory. Try opting out of the dollar system. Try refusing IMF conditions. Try rejecting SWIFT. You can't function in the global economy. The choice is submission or isolation. That's not freedom. That's hegemony disguised as choice, which makes it more stable than any empire before it. The empire even recruits its subjects into defending it. Countries hosting American bases believe they benefit from the arrangement. They get security guarantees, defense subsidies, status. They don't recognize they've surrendered sovereignty. America decides when to use those bases, for what purposes. Without host nation approval in many cases, status of forces agreements grant American troops immunity from local law. They can commit crimes and face no local prosecution. This is colonialism, just formalized through treaties instead of conquest. Legal imperialism replacing military imperialism. The most remarkable aspect is how few people recognize it. Empire used to be a source of pride. Britain celebrated empire. France declared a mission civilicitrice. Imperial powers acknowledged their dominance. America denies empire while operating the most extensive imperial system in history. Politicians call it leadership, responsibility, defending freedom. The language obscures the reality. 750 foreign bases isn't leadership, it's occupation. Controlling global payment systems isn't responsibility, it's dominance. Forcing countries to use your currency isn't freedom, it's extraction. The empire exists, it just rebranded. You're already inside it. When your country borrows in dollars, that's the empire. When SWIFT processes your international payment, that's the empire. When American bases surround your borders, that's the empire. When IMF conditions dictate your economic policy, that's the empire. When sanctions cut off your banking system, that's the empire. The architecture surrounds you, shapes your possibilities, limits your options. You participate because there's no alternative. The empire isn't a place you can locate on a map. It's the operating system of global capitalism, and you've been running on it your entire life without recognizing what it is.